Well, good Thursday afternoon to everyone. And since this is our last webinar before the Christmas holiday, I decided I'd be a little bit festive. So I brought my holly out today to join you in this webinar. We're going to have a very interesting webinar this afternoon, but before we get into the topic and the introduction of our panelists, let me remind you that we are on the Zoom portal for this webinar today. Notice on your screen that you will see at the bottom, at least on my screen, it's at the bottom. Sometimes on some portals, it's at the top. There is a Q&A dialogue. If you have questions anytime throughout the webinar, click on the Q&A and enter your questions in the Q&A dialogue. We will attempt to answer questions during the webinar. Lately, we've been getting through our Q&A on the webinar, so we've not left questions unanswered. However, know that we are recording this webinar. The webinar will be posted on our YouTube channel, and there will be a link to Google Docs. So as you see any spreadsheets or documents referenced, those documents will be available on our Google Docs link to this webinar. So with that, that's the logistics. Let's go ahead and get started. So our panel today includes Steve Denny, our regular lead panelist, and Steve has joining him today, Tom Daiber. Tom is the lead lender relations specialist with SBA St. Louis District Office. And I'm going to turn it over to Steve, and they will go into together our weekly update. So Steve Denny, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you very much, Marquita. And as always, we are so thankful for your stewardship and time to come on with us every week and moderate these panels. We are really honored this week to have Tom with us from the SBA. We're going to dive right into a discussion with Tom in just 1 second. As our audience attendees know and have come to rely on us to be a source of information, we've had a lot of questions that have come in this week regarding the various legislation that's on Capitol Hill. And I will tell you that we did receive a couple of versions of some of the early bills. There seems to be a lot of movement, and I had a contact with one of the members of Capitol Hill early this morning, and they told us that they feel very confident that there will be something that comes out, which is really good news, particularly for the small Main Street business community that we enjoy working with. So with that, very hopeful that we'll see something within the next day or two. There is some talk that they will stay through the weekend if necessary in order to get the deal done. So hopefully our legislators will get this thing done. We're honored this week to be joined by Tom Daiber, who is with the local district office for the Small Business Administration. Tom and I are going to have a discussion about SBA resources and all their activities throughout the year, and we invite your questions as well. There's a lot of new information and new requirements in order to comply with forward-looking SBA procedures, and we're going to dive into a lot of that. So, Tom, thank you very much for taking the time out. We're so honored to have you today.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you for the invitation. I look forward to our discussion and look forward to answering any questions, providing as much information as we can about SBA programs and what's going on right now. It's been a very exciting year, as you well know.
Boy, has it. It has been incredibly exciting. So, Tom, let's start with just a quick overview for the audience benefit of all the SBA products that are available. Can you give us kind of a brief thumbnail sketch of the various products that the U.S. Small Business Administration makes available for Main Street business owners?
Yeah, we provide support for capital for small businesses. We are a federal agency, so we're part of the U.S. government, so your taxpayer dollars at work. One of the requirements of getting an SBA guaranteed loan is for the borrower and the lender primarily to make a recommendation to SBA saying that they could not make the loan to this business without the government's guarantee and assistance. So those dollars are obviously limited as far as what we have available, but That's a requirement to meet. It's called the credit elsewhere test, if folks have heard of that, saying that the credit's not available to that business without the SBA's assistance. So in general, SBA does not make direct loans, and up till recent to this last year, that was always a pretty easy statement to understand. But the one exception to that is in a disaster situation, and lo and behold, I ever expected I'd be in a situation where most of our loans are, at least this past year, in a disaster situation. So mostly the disaster program is for hurricanes and fires and those, and remember the Joplin tornado, et cetera, where SBA will come in and make disaster loans. And in that scenario, SBA will make loans directly to small businesses. So with this pandemic, every state and every U.S. territory was declared an economic disaster. So since March of 2020, SBA has been making direct economic injury disaster loans, which is the EIDL loans. We also, I'm sure, get into the PPP program. But other than the disaster program, SBA has a 7A program, which is kind of our bread and butter. Those loans are made by our lending partners. Then they will apply to SBA for a 50 to 90% guarantee of that. And so the 7A program is the primary program, and then we also have the 504 program, which is a little bit different. The 7A program is the lender makes a loan and SBA provides a guarantee to the lender. The 504 loan is proceeds are be used for business real estate and large pieces of equipment that have long useful lives. The difference in the 504 program is that the third-party lender will make a loan for 50% of the project. SBA will take a second position and do that up to 40%, and then the borrower would inject 10% equity into the project. We had a record year this past fiscal year. Our fiscal year ends in September with the federal government, and we had a record year as far as 504 lending, even in the midst of the pandemic. And I think a big part of that was that SBA allows 504 loans to be up to 25 years, and our rates right now are roughly about 2.5% fixed for 25 years. So it's an attractive source of capital. So those are our primary lending programs. We also have a microloan program, which are loans available up to $50,000. In our area, we have one micro lender, Justine Peterson, who has been recognized nationally as not if one of, and we feel like the top micro lender in the country. So for folks who want smaller loans, you can go to the micro lender. That program works where SBA makes a loan to the micro lender, and they make small loans to businesses, basically help them get bank qualified and into a hopefully successful stream. So those are kind of the overview of the SBA's lending products.
Yeah, a vast majority of that typically in an average year is 7A loans. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Generally, we'll have about $30 billion nationally. They will go into the 7A program, and roughly $7.5 billion or so in 504. So yeah, about 4 to 1 goes into 7A.
Yeah, it's amazing. You know, we're also blessed to have a huge active lender list in the Eastern Missouri District. You want to speak on that a second and talk about what might be the difference between a regular lender and what the SBA refers to as a PLP lender?
Sure. Yeah, that's part of my role as lender relations is basically to work with our lending partners to try to help them get acclimated to the SBA program and understand how it works and make it as easy as possible for them to utilize that. So we are blessed in that most of the lenders in our area are part of the program and are able to make SBA loans. So if they are federally regulated by FDIC, Federal Reserve, state banking regulators, they're eligible to become an SBA lender. We try not to add extra layers of regulation on top of that, figuring that their loan portfolio is getting reviewed enough times. If they're working with their state regulators and are in good standing, then they should be qualified and hopefully able to issue good quality SBA loans. And so then the lenders who are more experienced have the ability to apply for, we call it delegated authority. So PLP is and I'm in the government, so we're great with acronyms. So PLP is Preferred Lender Program. So our Preferred Lender Program, or our PLP lenders, basically have demonstrated that they have a proficiency in doing SBA loans, and we give them authority to basically originate SBA loans without SBA's review. So they can, as I say, issue, and all they do is submit to us their input into our electronic portal, the information we require. We turn around, give them a loan number that same instant. As soon as they enter the information, and they're good to go with closing loans. So hopefully takes out some of the extra steps in getting SBA guaranteed loans to folks who need them.
So is it fair to say, Tom, that if a lender is an SBA approved lender, they're probably a pretty good vetted lender in that regard, but the difference between PLP and non-PLP is you might be able to get a deal done faster with somebody that already has this delegated authority that doesn't have that review period of time that a non-PLP lender might have?
Yeah, I mean, certainly the SBA not having review of the PLP loans does not add anything to the process. Hopefully, we work as close as we can with the non-preferred lenders as well to get that turnaround as quickly as possible. But as you can imagine, it depends upon the workflow and what's going on. And quite honestly, a lot of our staff right now is focused on trying to help with the disaster loan program. So it is maybe taking a little longer now than it would in a normal environment.
So yeah, that's a great transition to let's chat a little bit about 2020, because boy, you've heard me say it, many times. It's astounding what the U.S. Small Business Administration has accomplished this year. You want to weigh in on that and talk to us about the volume of loans that you guys have been a part of, and I'm sure that your staff and resources have grown as well as the volume of loans. Is that right, or did they just rely on all you guys just to do more?
Yeah, it's doing more with less primarily. I mean, it did bring in a big influx of temporary folks. SBA keeps staffing folks for the disaster office, so they are part-time folks that are called in a specific disaster, but we far outstripped that need. So SBA's been hiring and still hiring folks to help man the phones and manage the disaster process. Now, part of that challenge is it's hard to get people up to speed if they're not familiar with the product. So that has been one of the frustrations, I think, for folks trying to get answers on what's happening with the stats. Is just the sheer volume and not having enough people to handle the literally millions of loan applications that we've processed. Just on the PPP alone, we've done 5.5 million loans to PPP participants for over $500 billion. So that's about, I think, in our first, I think the first round of PPP dollars ran out in 2 weeks' time, and that was about 14 years worth of lending in 2 weeks. So it's definitely been getting a large amount of volume squeezed through the fire hoses in a very quick manner.
Man, it's just unbelievable. It's just astounding that can occur. We talk to business owners all the time, and I say, can you imagine having your business grow by not 100%, right, but by 20x over a period of time, like a 3 or a 6 or a 9 month period of time? It's just hard to imagine how the SBA was able to pull that off.
Yeah, it was quite a challenge, and our priority was getting the money to the people who needed it first, and devising some of the systems and some of the procedures and some of the more detailed answers to questions. We had to focus on and answering the questions that had affected the most people. So the one-off situations were very slow, maybe, or slower than what we like to get responses to. But yeah, and then I kind of likened it to being on a NASCAR pit crew and trying to change the tires on the car as it's still moving. It was a challenge.
What a great analogy. What a great analogy in that regard. Unbelievable. Yeah. So basically 20 years of activity that's been packed into 9 months. And then you guys still had your regular everyday 7A and 504 loans going on, right? I mean, the PPD didn't just put everybody else to the side, did it?
No, it was amazing, and just in the St. Louis district office works just eastern half of the state of Missouri, and Missouri is unusual because we have 2 Fed districts. Most SBA district offices cover the entire state, like Illinois is covered by the Chicago district office, covers the entire state of Illinois. So St. Louis office deals just in eastern half of Missouri, and Kansas City handles the western side of the state. And we have folks all the time that maybe live in the metro east of Illinois and can see our office literally from their office, but technically they are part of the Illinois district, and we still try to provide answers and help support them, but primarily their lead offices in Chicago. But yeah, we in a normal year, our office will work on and approve about 600 loans a year for about $250 million. So just the volume of what we've seen this year has been outstanding, has been tremendous. But yeah, in this year we were down, I think, in SBA loans. I think we were only a couple $1 million short of our last year amount. In 504 we did more. So to your point, we did almost as much volume this year in our normal lending as we did in a normal non-pandemic year.
It's unbelievable. It really is when you stop and just reflect on it. And I know you guys have been in it every day, so I'm sure it's just been round the clock for you guys on the inside.
Yeah, it's been quite a challenge. My role is primarily working with the lenders, but I also will and generally have more time to spend with individual businesses, and we do try to help them as well. And I've got other staff members that work primarily with the business community and handle those kind of questions. But yeah, it was all hands on deck for the last 9 months.
Well, you got a great group of folks there with, Marines leadership and Nikki and the rest of the team there. You guys got just a great office there in St. Louis. Talk, if you will, just a minute, Tom, about the organization with district offices and regional offices. And then I know that there are resources such as SCORE and small business development centers. Can you, for the sake of the audience that may not have a real good understanding of the SBA organization, can you give us just a quick thumbnail sketch of all that?
Sure. So what we have, we're broken down into district offices. We have, starting at the top, our administrator, Jovita Carranza, is appointed by the president and approved by the Senate, and she sits on the president's cabinet. So as small businesses have a representative at the table with our federal government. So she is a member of the president's cabinet, and then she has regional administrators who report to her. St. Louis and Missouri is part of Region 7, which is a 4-state area, which is Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska, and Iowa. So we're part of a Midwest region, and then we have the district offices. We have 68 district offices broken down between most states have 1, but some larger states have 2, 3. California, Texas, Florida, for example, have several offices, and then of course we have offices in the U.S. territories, Puerto Rico, and Guam. So we have 68 district offices, and so in our office we have District Director Maureen Brinkley, who's been with the SBA for 53 years. She started right out of high school, and it's the only job she's had, and I don't know if that happens very often anymore. So if anything, and we have it's a great benefit to us, because if there's anything SBA, she's seen it, knows it, and has done it. So we have great representation there. So, and our district office then is primarily the 3, we call them the 3 C's. So SBA supports capital through our loan program, which we're mostly known for. And then we provide access to counseling, and we provide assistance with governmental contracting. So on the governmental contracting, we have a person, Gary Alexander, who specializes in helping small businesses get access to capital. It's the federal government's goal to get 23% of all federal government contracts to small businesses. In the last couple of years, we've met that goal. So Gary is a great resource to help businesses that are looking for ways to expand their business to get access to not only federal contracts, but also help with state and local contract and airport authority, et cetera. So there's a lot of businesses that are looking for small businesses that, to help them fulfill and meet contract goals. And then on the counseling side, we provide funding and support for basically 4 groups of mentors and counselors with the SBA's assistance that meet with and provide free business advice for small businesses. It's SCORE, which is another acronym for the Senior Corps of Retired Executives. There's basically a group of business folks who are generally have retired and are wanting to give back. So they provide free mentoring, counseling, and meeting with advice for small businesses. And then we also work with the Small Business Development Centers in Missouri that's affiliated with the University of Missouri. So those folks are generally have their MBAs and also have been entrepreneurs and running their own business. So they provide free support and counseling. And then we have the Veterans Business Resource Center, which supports the Veterans Business Resource Center that we work with is actually based in St. Louis, and they provide support for the 4 states in our region. So we're fortunate to have them. They work primarily with veteran-owned businesses. And then we have women's-owned business centers. We have one based in St. Louis that just made a transition to the Union League. Is affiliated with the Union League here in St. Louis, and then also we have a women's business center in Columbia. So those 4 groups basically are we call them our resource partners because they do a great job of helping small businesses either draft or review a business plan and just help them get started in business and hopefully answer and support them and with having someone to help lead them along the way.
And the majority of that's free for business owners, right? I mean, I know the SCORE group is generally volunteer groups without cost, and then the WBEs and small business development centers, I know they have some paid programs, but there's a tremendous amount of free resources there as well, aren't they?
Correct. Yeah, the vast majority of those resources are all free. They will from time to time charge a minor fee for materials and seminars, but it's it's almost all free, and obviously from an SBA standpoint, since we're federal government employees, you've already paid us through our your tax payments. So anything we provide is free to the general public and open and non-discriminatory basis.
Yeah, it's also a well-kept secret that most of the SBA funding comes from program fees associated with lending. Is that right?
Yeah, the entire program is on a zero subsidy program, which folks don't even realize. So basically what happens is folks who take out a loan guarantee will pay a loan origination fee. Generally, it's going to be, depending upon the size of the loan, but it will vary between 2 and 3.75%. And that's of the guaranteed amount. So if you're paying 3% fee, it's of the amount. So if you're only guaranteeing 50% of a loan, then basically it's only 1.5% of the entire loan. But yeah, so generally we adjust those fees up and down each year so that the entrepreneurs who are using the loan guarantees, basically their loan origination fees are covering the cost of the program, and those guarantee fees can be added to the amount of the loan, so it's not an out-of-pocket expense for them. They can take that as part of the proceeds and take that into the project as well. But yes, you're correct. The entrepreneurs basically pay for the loan through the guarantee fees.
Yeah, it's an amazing resource for business owners. We refer people all the time. I always tell people when we're talking to folks that are looking to start a business or expand a business, reach out to the SBA and tap those resources first, because in my experience, people are always amazed at the depth and quality of resources they can get from the SBA. So I think, and I think their business plan, the business plan document that you guys have is just first class. So we use that as part of our regular referral of documents to business owners, and it's just a great package. The other thing is, you mentioned Gary. Gary oversees the 8A side as well as a whole.
That is correct. Yes, he's also in charge of our 8A program, which is basically a 9-year mentorship program. So folks who are looking to expand their business and get into government contracting, there's basically a mentorship there. And yeah, Gary's a great contact there and works with those folks and helps lead them through the program. The idea at the end of the 9 years is that they will graduate and be able to as you step through it, you start working with the government, and then you hopefully expand your client base, and by the end of that you're able to fly and continue on with not only government work but also hopefully other private contracts and business opportunities.
Yeah, it's amazing. I don't think business owners realize how much purchasing the government does, and the 8A is a great program to really get you to the head of the line in a lot of those deals. So, and I know Gary's an outstanding reference and a great guy to work with in that regard as well.
Absolutely.
Well kept secret within the SBA. So
Tom,
Tom,
yeah, Steve and Tom, I'm going to jump in here because we had a couple questions come in, but I want to get one to you right away. And that is, Steve or Tom, if you can address how our participants can get a copy of the SBA business plan document that you referenced.
So two ways. One is shoot us a note and we'll send it to you. We have a copy of it and keep it in our records. The other way is you can go directly to SBA, and I think it's on the SCORE. Is it under the SCORE.gov side, Tom?
Yeah, I think they've got one as well, and I think there's also other templates out there. So yeah, just go to the SBA website, which is sba.gov, and there's a whole bunch of resources out there that, again, are all free and available.
Yeah.
Okay, so Steve, could we put a link to that document on the Google Docs for this webinar?
We will. We will put
Awesome.
that document
Great.
in with the replay on our YouTube page. So we'll definitely do that. Very good. Tom, talk a little bit, if you will, about your specific job as the lead lender relations specialist within the district. What do you do specifically in working with lenders?
Yeah, so my role basically is lender relations is trying to basically make the SBA programs as attainable and easy to use and understandable as possible. As you can imagine, I worked in banking for many years before I joined the SBA. Bankers and lenders have plenty of other regulations and issues and things to learn. So we try not to make it any more difficult than is possible. And as you work with anything in the government, we have our standard operating procedures, and just on the 7A program, that document alone is roughly 500 pages. So what I tell our lenders is you don't need to know it or memorize it or even just hopefully be able to find it. And my resources, I tell them is to call me if you got a deal you're looking at and you don't know if it's going to be eligible. You can go and look it up in the 500-page document, try to find the answer yourself, or I'm more than happy to take a call and sit down with you and go through it and give you again, I don't have any authority to approve anything, but I can certainly give you hopefully some insight on what I've seen might work and might not work, and whether will be eligible for SBA. And I mean, obviously there are certain rules and things that apply to the government program. For example, it has to be owner occupied, so the project has to be 51% owned, and the owner has to operate in that business space at least 51% of the time. And there's lots of nuances. Obviously, we're a federal agency, so anything to do with marijuana is taboo right now. It can't be used. Can't use the SBA program for that. So if you're in a building and you want to lease space out to a place that sells CBD oil, it has to meet certain requirements of having less than 0.3% product in it. So there's all these little nuances that we don't expect folks to know, and that's kind of my role, to try to make the process as easy as possible, or answer questions, be accessible. Up until probably 15 years ago, the loan applications were actually reviewed and approved in our office. We went the route of trying to make things more efficient, and we have a loan processing center now. So every 7A loan application that's sent to SBA basically is processed and reviewed by a team of folks who do nothing but review those applications every day, and that's based in California. So I wouldn't want to be sitting at that. And I've spent some time out there. I could see, it's like a warehouse. You sit there and you have you have a stack of files, and you move 4 or 5 of those through, and somebody comes on and drops another 10 on your desk. So our role is at least for me, much more enjoyable, because I get to deal one-on-one with our lenders and provide support. You also provide training and education, and try to answer questions and provide them with overview. And we do joint trainings as well as individual trainings. And the most effective sometimes is for someone who's trying to learn the program is sit down with them and go through a loan application and kind of help lead them through the process. So I try to cover that with them, and that's my primary role. I do interact with borrowers when I can, and if there's issues and things, but our primary role is to try to help the lenders through the process and understand the SBA products and get the SBA loans out to people who need them.
God bless you, Tom. It's phenomenal work, and I know that you are on the speed dial of every active lender in the region. And with this PPP that came out with a program that no lender had ever used before, I can just imagine that how incredibly busy you've been over the last 9 months.
Yeah, it's been. I tell folks it's probably been the most challenging time of my career, but also the most rewarding because we're getting money out to folks that need it, and our administrators has stood up and said that we haven't rolled it out without glitches, but you think about the amount of dollars and the amount of businesses that have been able to hopefully keep their doors open, and we don't know what Congress is going to do. They're meeting right now as we speak about the next round, but hopefully we can continue, and looks like we're getting hopefully to the point where the vaccines are rolling out. So it's going to be a while yet before we're up and running again in a new normal environment, but hopefully we're able to help folks stay in business, and actually some people are even starting business in this environment. So it kind of speaks to the entrepreneurial spirit that we see.
It's an interesting comment. Before we move on into some of the new procedural stuff, startup businesses, the SBA does a fair amount of lending to brand new startup businesses as well. It's not just for existing businesses, right?
No, that's exactly right. Yeah, I'd say about a third of the loans that we guarantee are for brand new businesses. So, and that's where a lot of lenders will lean on us because they just don't have, it's easier to make a loan to a business who's been around for 10 years, has great cash flow, build up equity, has good collateral. Any lender can make those kind of loans. The folks that need the money are folks who are trying to start up a business that don't have the historical results to show they have the cash flow. So working with our resource partners, they put together a business plan and underwrite that loan, and we will approve SBA loans based upon reasonable projections. So obviously working with a resource partner who has access to databases and things that can help support the reasonableness of those projections certainly help. But yeah, we do a number of, like I said, about a third of our businesses for startup businesses, and a few examples of that businesses you might have heard of is Apple, FedEx, Ben & Jerry's, Nike. So there have been a lot of folks who needed a hand to get their business off the ground, and so we've been proud to work with those and literally thousands and thousands of other folks that have started their businesses.
Yeah, that's a well-kept secret.
Definitely. Tom, say I'm going to throw a question in, and it's kind of a, I don't know, 60,000-foot question. We just saw a report over the last couple of days that was the result of a survey done by the U.S. Chamber. And essentially, they surveyed small business owners. And I was personally very surprised at how dismal the report appeared. And that was that business owners essentially were saying, as many as half or more of them, that they were very uncertain about the future and that they were looking more in the short term to possibly 6 months out, that they really don't know that their business will continue to exist. I couldn't believe the numbers, and I'm not sure how large that population was that was involved in the survey. But one of the things that makes me think about in the context of what you're doing is it's clear to me that to the degree these businesses have PPP loans and EIDL loans funding them through this pandemic, I think the government, the Fed, the Treasury considered those as being highly risky propositions, and that many of them will be forgiven just because they're forgivable loans anyway. On the other hand, I wonder about the 7A and 504 portfolio, because those are really held in the bank. So the bank looks at the risk. But Treasury, SBA, is the guarantor. What are your thoughts now looking into the future, say 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 months out, in terms of the quality of the loan portfolio and what might happen?
Well, that's a great question. And I think, I mean, looking back to what happened when we had the Great Recession, is that we did see an increase in the amount of loans that, it's kind of like moving a large creature through the belly of a snake, right? It takes a long time to move through. So we, going through the Great Recession in 07, 08, 09, 10, we saw an increase in loan losses in 10, 11, 12, and maybe even at 13 before those all kind of worked their way through the system. So I would expect that there will be increased losses in the existing portfolio, but knock on wood, the numbers that we've seen so far have been encouraging. I think one of those was a result of the CARES Act. One other item in there that some folks didn't realize was in there was Congress allocated $17 billion to SBA to make 6 months worth of payments for all SBA guaranteed loans. So that again was another resource for small businesses to basically have relief from having to make their payments. So that, I think, was able to give businesses a chance to make some changes and adapt and address other areas of the business to keep them in business. And so been very encouraging to see, the ingenuity of what some folks have done. Now, there's obviously been a number of folks who've been greatly impacted, and the restaurant industry in particular has certainly taken a big hit through this whole process. So I do expect there'll be an increase in issues and businesses being closed, but so far I'd say the impact hopefully has been offset somewhat anyway with the program, and we'll see what Congress does here. It seems like they're getting close on doing another round of hopefully help. So hopefully that will bridge the gap until we can get back to whatever our new normal will look like.
Yeah, it is amazing. There's going to be some collateral damage, no doubt. It's just what is the degree? So only time will tell in that regard. I also want to kind of close the loop on the startup side, and I hadn't planned to ask you this, but if a third of the activity is for startups, I'm curious, Tom. I would imagine a significant amount of that is franchise startups, and a significant amount of it is kind of non-franchise startups. Is that right, or am I thinking about that wrong?
No, that's true. I don't have a breakdown as far as what percentage of that is franchise, but we do see a number of franchises, and that was one of the things that was actually enhanced as part of the PPP process. Was we expanded our franchise directory. So SBA is kind of zigged and zagged over the last couple of years as far as how we handle franchises, and I think we've got it right now because we have basically a franchise directory. It's available on SBA.gov. So what was happening before is that when a business was opening as a franchise, the SBA's legal team had to review every single franchise document. So what we've done is we've gotten the franchisors to send us their copy of their agreements if they want to be in the program, and then we do a review of those agreements. They agree to use that reviewed agreement with any of their franchisees. So basically, it expedites the process, so it doesn't slow it down. So there are an increased volume of franchise loans being done now compared to a few years ago, just from the standpoint of we've added a lot more franchisees, and we've also made the process a lot easier with that. And then we do an annual review with the franchisors who, if they update their agreement, that's fine. But when then they certify that these are basically the block of documents they're going to use going forward, it will be SBA. Make it eligible for SBA lending. The primary thing SBA looks for with a franchise arrangement is to make sure that the franchisee has the ability to run and manage their own business. And as we don't want them to be a satellite office of a big, huge corporation, they need to have the ability to hire and fire people and run their business like they would if it wasn't part of a franchise. It doesn't mean that the franchisor can't have a first right of refusal to make sure they can control who their franchisee is going to be, but they can't restrict the franchisor from a franchisee from being able to basically sell their business to someone if they're ready to retire and move on. So that's kind of the things we're looking for, and that is that they are able to operate their business as they see fit and run it as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, excellent. It is an excellent resource, and we've been a party to several of those deals, and it having the SBA there makes a lot of those transitions very, very easy and quite expedient. So it's a great resource. Well, listen, Marquita kind of introduced the topic of risk assessment, and at the end of the day, the SBA is in effect. While they're taking on riskier loans than lenders will, that's the purpose of the SBA, right? Somebody that can't get a loan someplace else to be able to go to the SBA and get that underwriting guarantee, which allows them to access the capital that they need to open or run their business. The SBA has some requirements to basically review the terms and conditions and the worthiness of the borrower, and that's, Tom, a lot of the the new procedures that have come into play have been a result of this COVID experience, because this has been, in some regards, an industry changing experience for some companies like hospitality companies right now. And as a result, the SBA has quite responsibly made some adjustments to the business documentation that's required as part of your lending. So there are 10 major procedural rules. I thought if you're okay with this, Tom, we'll take a couple of minutes and go through each of them and have you comment on those and see if we can, blow away some of the clouded mystery from some of these rules. Is that fair?
No, that sounds fine. And you're right. Yeah, I think that SBA has come out with some questions or some information that hopefully lenders are looking at, even if it's not SBA guaranteed, but and hopefully the business owners are looking at these as well. But yeah, I'll be happy to go through those individually.
Excellent. Well, the first one really relates to basically the indebtedness of the borrower, right? Whether it's an existing company or a new company, and with PPP loans and I think, is this maybe the first time in our nation's history that all states were under a disaster notification at the same time?
This is exactly right. That's the first time in history the disaster program was basically set up to to help with the floods and the hurricanes and et cetera. But yeah, this is, and there have been economic injury disaster loans available in other scenarios. But yeah, basically this is a first where every state and every territory is declared a disaster at the same time.
Yeah, unbelievable. But we're in a situation now where sole proprietors may have EIDL loans and then start a business or expand their business. So there's this whole new requirement about what's the loan status and what does cash flow look like before the loan, during the loan, and after the loan, because in some instances these loans payments might not have even started yet, right? Can you speak to this for a second and talk a little bit about what the SBA is looking for and what their requirements are for new applications?
Yeah, so the first question or first additional factor SBA wants to consider is to understand what are the loans the applicant's taken to out specifically to get through this pandemic, but obviously any other debt that's been incurred, and to look at what the impact of that is going to be on the cash flow of the business. So basically in an SBA program, we're taking available collateral, but we do not deny an SBA guaranteed loan for lack of collateral. So a 7A program, many of our loans are not fully secured. So again, any assets you purchase with the loan proceeds have to be pledged, but we are looking primarily at character and cash flow when we're analyzing our credit. So cash flow is important. So we want to understand what's going to happen, how the additional loans that have been taken out are going to be repaid, and are they being paid current? What's the status of that? And obviously related to the PPP, is the expectation that they'll be forgiven. I mean, that's the SBA's intent was structured those loans so that if those funds are used primarily for payroll, keep payroll protection program is the acronym. So if the money is used properly, that those loans should be eligible for forgiveness and not have being repaid. But if there are some that are going to have to not be forgiven and have to be repaid, what impact will that have on the cash flow of the business, and will they be able to meet that debt going forward? And the EIDL loans, the PPP loans are unsecured. The EIDL loans, the SBA took a lien against business assets, deliberately did not take any lien on real estate, so left that free and available to pledge or use as collateral for other indebtedness. But there is a UCC lien filed on business assets of any business that took out an EIDL loan. But SBA has a process to look at that, and if the business needs to borrow more money or renew a working line of credit, there's a procedure in place for SBA to look at that and to subordinate the lien position so it doesn't handicap the business going forward.
Excellent. But that's a situation where so at some point in the future, if you have an EIDL loan and you need to take out a new loan, you may need to, as part of that loan process, go back to the SBA and get some level of get a subordination agreement to allow them to potentially mitigate part of that for the new loan. Is that what you're saying?
That is correct, yes. And obviously we're early in the process. My understanding, as long as they're paying that loan back and cash flow looks reasonable, obviously we're caretakers of taxpayer dollars, so we don't want to be flippant about just doing subordinations and releases. But in general, if the business is performing and operating and prospects still look good, then SBA would look at subordinating the SBA lien so that business can borrow money, through conventional or other means to be able to continue on and hopefully be successful.
Excellent. Well, I think that helps on the first one. On the second one, it's all about the how the industry and the specific business has been affected throughout this pandemic, and what type of contingency plans they may have and so forth. So specifically, what do you, in your discussion with lenders, what are they typically looking for in terms of documentation to address the second procedural point?
Yeah, so in that one, we're looking for is whatever the business's NAICS code is, the North American Industry Classification System, whatever industry they're operating in, to have some understanding and document how has that impacted the industry and this particular business. And we obviously mentioned restaurants as an example. We all know that many restaurants have been barred from having in store dining. So how have they been able to address that, and how has that impacted their revenue? How has it impacted their staffing levels? What is their plan, and what is their estimate as far as when they'll be able to return to a more normalized situation? And do they have the cash flow and resources available to help them get through that? So that's basically kind of the scenario that we're hoping that the lender will work with, and hopefully the business owner is working through that themselves as far as how are we going to bridge this gap and get to the other side of this.
Yeah, it is an interesting thing, because there are certainly some industries that have been favorably impacted as well. So what we've seen, Tom, is there are a lot of industries that are in like the home services industry, home remodeling contractors, HVACs, even swimming pool builders and things of that nature that have just been flourishing through this period of time. And the counsel we've been giving them is, yeah, you guys have been feasting during this period, but don't think this feast is going to last forever, right? There is probably going to be some return to normalcy.
Yeah, it's like any other economic cycle. It's, like you mentioned, there's certain industries like home remodelers that can't get, can't find enough people to get the work done, and people are doing a lot of projects, and so yeah, so it's not just negative. You're right. There's a lot of businesses that have found a way to adapt and hopefully even thrive in this environment and do as well, if not better than what they had been doing before, which is great.
So this, the other thing in this second one is it really talks about contingency plans and so forth. So is, from an SBA perspective, is that viewed as a write-up, or are you looking for a write-up plus projections in that regard when it references here this contingency planning portion?
Yeah, generally we like to see a year's projection on a month-to-month basis, and then look at years 2s and 3s can be just an annual projection. But yeah, I would say a reasonable forecast of what they think will happen with revenues and operating expenses, and then some narrative explaining, if you're projecting revenues are going to go up by X% or costs are going to be reduced by X amount, what's the underlying assumptions there, and how are you going to achieve that? Are you rolling on a new product? Are you laying off staff? Are you consolidating operations, closing a facility? What are you doing to justify what your projections are to kind of help support that?
Excellent. Excellent. Thanks for the clarity. As we move into number 3, it really refers to, how's the business coping with stay-at-home orders and social distancing and so forth. Any particular guidance you'd give us in that area?
Yeah, so I think it's just trying to drill down a little bit further into that particular business. So what impact, if any, does it have that folks are not able to come meet in person or social distance and not able to travel as much? What kind of limitations are you seeing? And how is that going to impact your cost? Are you able to get access to your clientele? Are you able to get access to the supplies that you need? Are you able to acquire the inventory that you need? If you've got inventory turn of 2 times a year to keep your cash flow going, or is that slowing down? Is it speeding up? And kind of understanding what all those things are going to do and how it's going to impact your business and your operations.
So in this area, is it primarily more narrative information that you're looking for that is gleaned from the supporting documents, the month-to-month financials and other submissions?
Yeah, that's how I would see it. It would kind of help be a further support for your projections and drill down a little bit further into specific impacts that you're seeing at your business level.
Excellent. I'm going to assume that that's probably going to be the same thing for number 4, which talks about, impacts of other operational costs, things like, cleaning materials and protective equipment, et cetera.
Exactly. Yeah. Same type of thing as, what steps you taken to help ensure safety of your customers and your employees, and what costs or additional things, how is that going to impact your operating structure?
Yeah, it seems to have affected everybody, essential or non-essential. We've all experienced increased costs in those areas, I think.
I think so.
The number 5 talks about historical financial information, the reliability of that, and it also brings in this break-even analysis process, which I think I can count on one hand the number of business owners that we've talked with over the last few years that even think in terms of break-even analysis. But I know as bankers, the bankers think about it on a routine basis. But can you speak to that?
Yeah, so I think the main thrust there is, can you rely upon the historic numbers? In other words, are you operating at or able to maintain the same level of cash flow as you were before? And some businesses may be doing better, but there may be others that they're not able to do that same type of level. So I think what it's asking for then is to kind of look at what is the decreased cash flow look like, and are you at are nearing break even point, or are you below break even? If you're below break even, what kind of changes are you going to be able to make to with additional capital or reduction in expenses or new markets or new customers, et cetera? How are you going to adapt your business to be able to, because at the end of the day, hopefully businesses can survive a short period of time with that, but we all know that negative cash flow can't go on forever.
Yeah, unless you're Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates or somebody like that, nobody has the pockets to last forever in that regard, right?
No, exactly. I think it's just understanding that, and what is that? At what point do you get to, what point do you get to the point where you don't have the cash to operate, as well as what steps do you need to take to make sure that on a month-by-month basis you're able to hit that break even or maintain that break even, and hopefully you're not there yet. If you're trending downward, then what other steps do you need to take to make sure, what contingency plans again do you have in place to put in place if you do need to make more cuts, for example?
Yeah, break-even's kind of a new twist there. We do a considerable amount of valuation work. We have a break-even calculation that's always in that valuation methodology, but that's a level of focus that kind of surprised me a little bit when I saw the points. It looks like there's certainly going to be more attention to that.
Yep, you bet.
And the same thing with number 6, as it talks about, how concentrated or diversified is the customer base. From a business valuation standpoint, we preach that's one of the key measures of the overall value of the company. Talk a little bit about what the SBA requirement is here, Tom, and what you're looking for in that regard to evaluate potential lending in the future.
Yeah, so I think I think it's kind of what you had said, is it's kind of understanding what is the customer base. So obviously, if you've got one customer that's 50% of your sales, that's totally different than having 10 businesses maybe that make up 50%, and then you have a bunch of other smaller folks. So if you are very heavily relying upon one or a handful of businesses, that creates obviously more risk. And what are your, I guess, plans if you lose one of those customers, and what is your strategy there, and how are you dependent upon that? And even you may even have a very loyal customer who's been with you forever, but how well are they doing? If they're been negatively impacted by the pandemic, and are they going to be able to survive? So it might be that they want to stay with you, but they just don't have the financial resources to be able to continue to operate, or they may have to roll back their purchases from you, and what impact will that have on you? So I think just understanding how diverse your base is and how reliant upon you are on your more significant and larger customers.
So from a practical reality standpoint, when you're submitting your month to month for the first year, and then your second and third year projections, should you be footnoting sales with additional data tables that potentially have customer concentration numbers, identifying, here's my top 10 customers and they represent X percentage of my sales volume, et cetera?
Yeah, I think that's what we're looking for there, and maybe the simple statement saying we have no customer that's more than 5% of our sales or whatever. And if that's the case, you can do a simple one-step footnote probably. But
okay.
Yeah, if you've got a large percentage of your sales that are tied up in one or a few customers, I would footnote that and address that, and talk a little bit about how that may impact your business going forward.
So point 7 really talks about the same kind of thing, but as it relates to your vendors and suppliers. So would you say the discussion we've just had kind of applies, equally well to number 7?
Yes, I would agree. Kind of same type of analysis. Yes.
Okay, great. Number 8 talks about the impact of current market conditions. Can you speak a little bit more about that?
Yes, I think that's addressed more toward the collateral adequacy of where you are. And as I said, from an SBA 7A standpoint, anyway, we'll still look at doing the loan guarantee even if the collateral is not sufficient. But I think that's going to be an impact on what are your, is that going to narrow your other options? So if you're relying upon going out and getting another conventional loan or other source of capital, and is that financer going to want to have collateral, and if the market conditions have taken down the value of your real estate by X amount, you may not have the same level of ability to borrow, and kind of factoring that into your analysis.
Yeah, it's amazing. As one of the things we teach in bank, we have this thing we call bankability measure, and we teach folks to do what we call the fair market balance sheet, which is really taking a look at all of their collateral and determining, what is today's fair market value of that collateral? Is it less than book value, or is it potentially more than book value? Because it definitely, we don't want to see business owners that are surprised when they sit down and talk with their lender, and the lender gives an assessment that, hey, your real property value might be significantly less than it was, a year ago and the last time we looked at this. So it's these things are taking more prevalence in the underwriting process, is the way it looks to me.
I would agree.
So 9 talks about primarily under the change of control, and it's all about adequate industry experience and so forth. There's always been this on the SBA side. You guys don't want to make obviously don't want to make loans. It's not prudent to make loans to people that don't have the experience or skill sets in order to run the business. But this has been called out again and stressed further. You want to speak to that as well?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it's goes back to the character and cash flows. From a character standpoint, it could be character/experience. So, does the buyer have the ability and experience in that industry to manage that business, and/or are there enough other folks that going to stay on with the business to be able to make sure it's a smooth transition and the business will be able to continue to operate. So I think you want to do that type of analysis, and then along with the other step of that is does the buyer and seller both have if the seller has a PPP loan and the buyer has a PPP loan, that could be a challenge because under the rules of the PPP loan, there can only be one per business. So you need to at least think about that, plan ahead, and our recommendation is to try to get your application for forgiveness in sooner rather than later, so hopefully you can get that processed and forgiven, so there's not the problem with having more than one loan at the same business.
Yeah, excellent. I think that's very helpful. And then finally, Tom, number 10, really talks about working capital as well. You want to elaborate in that area?
Yeah, that's been one of the things, not just in this COVID environment, but just in general, is that we try to encourage the lenders to drill down a little bit further and explain working capital. I mean, working capital is kind of a catch-all. Obviously, it can be anything from paying salaries to buying inventory and financing receivables, et cetera. If you're a franchisor, paying franchise fees, which is perfectly acceptable with SBA proceeds, but it's just understanding and drilling down a little bit more as far as where those funds are going to be. And it's okay to have some of those funds sitting in, hopefully a cash reserve account for your rainy day fund, but we need to understand and want to have a breakdown of kind of what that looks like and how much of that's going to be used and how it's going to be spent.
Well, it's clear these 10 procedural rules are, focusing the banks and the lenders and SBA's internal underwriting and approval process to take a much more detailed look at the loan applicant. Anything else that you want to throw in here, Tom, that might be useful for our audience in that regard?
Yeah, I think the other thing that's in the information notice that SBA just points out is beyond looking at the individual borrowers' financials and contingency plans, et cetera, is to also make sure the lenders are looking at and understanding what the appraiser and a business valuation has been done, and if it was done prior to the pandemic, are those assumptions still good? And again, kind of making sure that the cash flow impact that's maybe anticipated and been experienced from the COVID is properly reflected and analyzed in the evaluation and in the business valuation and the appraiser. And not to say that we all hope that it'll be a big bounce back, but trying to understand and explain that, and obviously looking at what the trend is. If the business is still trending downward in cash flow, when are they going to hit the bottom? When they're going to turn? Or if they've already made adjustments and kind of coming back, then it's a little bit easier to support. Yeah, the historical numbers, are more supportable, and we feel comfortable this business will get back to that level and the values will return. But it's kind of looking and hoping that the lenders will address that in their analysis as well.
Yeah, you guys have given some very targeted requirements there as well, where we've got to now state within the valuations, whether the business is essential or not essential, whether they've experienced any closures or restrictions, and specifically whether they've incurred any additional debt, whether it be, emergency debt or not. So there are certainly new restrictions or new areas of information that have got to be called out in the valuations, and I'm sure it's going to be very useful for everybody throughout the process. But these are all of these areas are things that I think for applicants are going to be relatively new. Looking at prior year month over month, and then this year month over month, and really trying to do a detailed analysis of the impact on the business is going to require more attention from the business owners. And it's just the natural, seems to me to be just kind of the natural consequence of this pandemic we've gone through.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great way to summarize it. It's really just, it's hopefully a step that the lenders are looking to already thinking about, and hopefully the business owners as well are kind of hopefully thinking about that. But yeah, it's going to force them to kind of look down, and it's not as easy as looking at, my month-to-month trends are the same, because everything's different this year. So it's going to take a little bit more analysis and explanation, I think.
Well,
and Tom and Steve, this was awesome, because I can tell you from my own perspective, I think this really helps to think in terms of before I go to start the process, either for applying or for doing my follow-up state of the business, that I need to have this data captured. I need to have this information captured. I need to have thought about this. And so for our audience, I think this is huge, because so many of us do have SBA loans, and we need to be prepared to know that we don't have this extra work back end loaded, but that we're capturing it as we go along.
Well said. Well said. Well, bottom line is there is plenty of money available. So money is available for help in these regards, but because of the situation we're living in, the requirements to make sure all of the questions are answered for the various lenders up front are heavier than they were a year ago. So I think the good news is there's money available. It's going to take a little bit more disclosure to get there, but help is certainly available. So Tom, I know we're a few minutes over the hour, and we told you we'd hold as firm to the hour as we could, because I know your time is incredibly precious. But man, oh man, we are in your debt. Very, very useful information today, and we're so honored that you were able to carve out an hour for us and join us on this call.
I was glad to help, and hopefully the information is useful. And if SBA can be of assistance, please reach out to our St. Louis office. Any one of us would be happy to assist in any way we can. And thank you for the invitation and allowing me to participate today.
Okay, so with that, we're going to begin to wrap up, but I do want to let Edward know, who just posed a late question. His question relates to a webinar, Steve, that you participated in, I think, earlier today. We will not answer that live now, but we will answer that question and make it available in Google Docs as we post a follow-up to this webinar. And he's specifically asking about PPP and escrow. There was a specific question, and I hope, Steve, you understand the question he's asking relative to that webinar this morning that you participated in. And he says, thank you. So we've Edward, noted your question, and we will post an answer for you on our Google Docs as we reply to this. Okay,
Fantastic.
With that said, Steve, you can have the very last word and wrap us up.
Excellent. Well, again, Tom, thank you so much. The local folks, Tom is a great example of the local team. I didn't realize Maureen had been there 53 years. I knew she'd been there an awful long time, but I would have never guessed she was old enough to have worked in that place 53 years. Tom,
well, that's kind of you to say. I think she always tells us that she started in grade school. So there you go.
Well, it's a great team that you guys have got. They're just a phenomenal group. And, in these times, I have heard that sometimes the SBA is hard to get a hold of. Give them a little grace, folks. They just completed 20 years of effort in 9 months period. And the workload is not slowing down, but they're a great group of people, and they're all strongly hearted towards helping the business community succeed. So Tom, again, we're very grateful for the time today. Thank you very much. And we wish you and your family a very blessed and restful holiday period. Hope you do get a little bit of rest over the holiday period. And we're praying that 2021 is going to be a lot better year for all of us.
I appreciate that. Again, thank you all, and happy holidays to everyone.
Happy holidays, everyone. And we'll see you January. What is the date, Steve?
January 7th.
Do we know the date? January 7th. We'll see you then. Bye-bye,
Outstanding.
everyone. Have
Take
a happy
care.
holiday.